Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverin Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for this week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. We are ready for our first road trip of the year as Week 5 of the season gets underway. Joining us in just a few minutes will be beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. Before that, let's get warmed up with my view from Section 17 and a few words from Jim. We are almost 20-point favorites heading into Saturday's game, which means nothing. Nebraska has been running the ball for almost 250 yards a game and has the leading run defense in the nation. They also have 14 sacks. It's fair to ask, though, but who have they played? You could ask the same question about us. First-year head coach Matt Rule knows what he's up against on Saturday. They want to shorten this game and lean on their defense. Week by week, we learn more about this Michigan team and their MO. It will be no different this Saturday. They are faced with a decent opponent and playing in one of the most hostile environments in college football. At his Monday presser, Jim was asked if his game plan will be different going up against the nation's #1 rushing defense and a team that likes to run a lot of option football on offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the planning of it and, recognizing how they're doing that. They're good. They're really good at playing multiple fronts, multiple schemes. So it's going to be an important week of planning and preparation. Then we'll go compete and try to execute to the best of our ability.
Jim said Nebraska is good on both sides of the football, so Michigan will need to execute.
It's a great formula. Stopping the run and being able to run the ball is a winning formula in football. We're just going to have to play good. It will be a game of blocking, tackling, focusing on fundamentals, reads, getting off blocks, defeating blocks, playing the assignment, being in the right alignment, being in the right technique. A lot of focus on real football fundamentals and technique.
Jim heaped praise on J.J. McCarthy and said last Saturday was one of his best games.
This was one of his best games. There was, when I say AP quarterbacking, the shot play was being defended, and he kicks it out in the flat, and we get a nice gain to Donovan Edwards. There's another really good play. It was similar to the ECU game, where we're running a flat corner combination. And in the ECU game, JJ made that throw in there that was right on the money into a tight window. I think you probably may remember that one. Similar play in this game, and CJ's running the route. The corner was baiting JJ, had seen that play on film, and you could just see that he was doing a great job of baiting him into that throw, but he was moving to intercept that ball. JJ just kicked it out to A.J. Varner, who was in the flat on the sideline. Might have been a 6-yard gain, might have been an 8-yard gain. There was a play where multiple times people were covered. There was nobody open, and he brought the ball down, ran it. There was another play where they were covered. He started to get pressure. He stepped up, threw the ball away, and then the very next play came back and threw a touchdown pass. if I'm remembering that sequence right, which I think I am. Quick hands on the indecision on the option, the two-way option, handoff or run himself. Big gains, big third down conversions by running and throwing. Big plays by running and throwing. He was sharp, just a really, really sharp game.
My guest today says the Huskers know they are outgunned on Saturday, but if they can run the ball, eat some clock, and play solid defense, they might be able to hang around in this one. With us next is beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. So stay with us. Here with us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week is beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. Great to have you back with us, Aaron.
Mike, it's good to be back. We're 4 games in the season, or 5 games in the season now. Football's hot and heavy, and weather's starting to turn, and it's a good time to be a football fan.
Absolutely, as you and I discussed before we started taping, our favorite time of the year, with especially as we roll into October, the Big Ten schedule gets really interesting. Before we talk about what's next on Saturday, Aaron, let's take a look back at the Rutgers game this past Saturday. Good win for Michigan, another slow start. But I do have to say this, watching that game, Coach Schiano has that Rutgers team playing some really good, tough, physical football, and they really did play Michigan tough into the third quarter, didn't they?
Yeah, you start to feel for them in times. They're stuck in the Big Ten East with the Michigans and the Ohio States and the Penn State. So I think the Big Ten expansion next year with the introduction of UCLA and USC and Oregon and Washington, I think is going to help them. But yeah, he's always put together well-run football teams. Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan coaching staff, even some of the players are very complimentary of him and his style and his team. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, Michigan just kind of overmatched them, right? They just had the more superior talent, better players, and obviously it was at home, so it helped them as well. But yeah, strong showing, I think, from Michigan. I would say it was probably the most complete performance of the year. I know maybe some fans maybe wanted a larger, maybe more lopsided score, but for, first Big Ten game, coming off of maybe a disappointing performance against Bowling Green, I'd say Michigan handled themselves pretty well. I mean, they got punched in the mouth early, they responded. And Rutgers was never really a factor after that. I think it probably quelled some fears from maybe some Michigan fans coming out of that Bowling Green game, and they're off and running the Big Ten schedule now.
It was a good win. It was the first, I think, really physical test that Michigan had, and they passed with flying colors. Now, we saw some more shuffling at the tackle positions in this game. So through 4 games, what is your impression of that offensive line group?
Yeah, it's still, I think, a work in progress. The players will tell you that. The coaches will tell you that. We got to keep in mind, there were 3 new transfers in this group. 2 of them did not participate in spring practice, so it was they had to come in quickly, learn things. Also coming off injuries, some of them hadn't played in a while, so there were a lot of moving parts there. And Michigan didn't seem too concerned, in the summer going into camp. But you got to remember, it takes, of all the position groups on offense, I'd say the offensive line probably takes the most to try and to get acclimated with one another. They've gotten better as the weeks have gone on. It's shown in the grading and some of the progress with the run game. Probably not where they want to be, but yes, there has been shuffling. We thought maybe a position, a starting change was coming to the starting group, but I don't know if that's the case now. It sounds like Miles Hinton, the starting right tackle, has been banged up. He's been playing through injury, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen him kind of pull in the second half in some of these games. But yeah, Michigan's real happy with Carson Barnhart, right? He's gotten to start all 4 games at left tackle. I think he's probably their number 1 tackle at this point, and I think it's been proven the way they've utilized him, right? He started at left tackle, and then as they moved Miles Hinton out in some of these games, they moved Barnhart over to right tackle. and then inserted Darius Henderson in, the transfer from Arizona State. So interestingly enough, Trente Jones seems to have he's been kind of slowly phased out here in the last couple of weeks. They haven't used him a ton. After they did, he essentially started as a sixth lineman in the first couple of games. So there's a lot of mixing and matching going on. I think part of that is due to the Hinton injury. Jerome Moore, Michigan's offensive line coach, a few weeks ago that he was pretty set with the starting five. He thought they'd found their group. I don't anticipate much change from here on out unless something catastrophic happens to one of them. Zinter's been playing well. Keegan's been hit or miss, as he usually is. And Nugent, I think, has been a strong surprise as well.
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind is it is September, and as you mentioned, there are 3 new faces on that group, although collectively a very talented group of offensive linemen. It does take time, and you don't want to peak in September.
No, and remember, too, Michigan began this year kind of throwing the ball more than they're used to doing. So the offensive line probably had some adjusting to do from a pass protection standpoint. They've held up pretty well. If you look at the advanced metrics and the grading and everything else, Michigan's actually blocking very well in the pass game. It's been the run game that's been the struggle. So, and typically that makes sense. I mean, there's a lot more intricacies involved in the run game, a lot more stuff going on there, X's and O's wise. And they're learning to communicate with one another, and that's kind of where the new transfers come in. So it's gotten better. I think that's been proven in the rushing staff you've seen the last couple of weeks. Blake Corum's starting to get it going. You're starting to see more yards per carry with some of these guys. Holes are beginning to open, and I think as we go on in time here, as this group gets familiar with playing next to one another, you're going to see it improve.
Yeah, and the numbers do indicate the running game is rounding into shape. As you mentioned, Blake Corum starting to come into form. He looks really good. Saturday, we saw Blake and Donovan on the field quite a bit. We're seeing more of that, it seems, because it looks like Sharon is trying to get Donovan Edwards, jump-started or more involved in the offensive flow, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that was something we kind of anticipated happening, before the season started, right? I think Jim Harbaugh floated that idea out, and it made sense, right? Michigan's key playmakers last year, specifically were Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, so maybe different points for different reasons. But, they talked a lot this offseason about getting the ball in the hands of all their playmakers. And with those two guys, capable of breaking big runs and breaking big plays, you want to get them out there on the field at the same time. They did it quite a bit in the first week. They went back to it again Saturday against Rutgers. Part of it was, again, they needed a big play, but like you said, they're trying to get Donovan more involved. He's really scuffled with the running game so far. Hasn't broken that big home run play. Maybe some of us gotten used to him doing late last year. So they're trying to get him involved in other ways. And the passing game is a big reason for that. We've seen him, he's had some big plays in the passing game. He's become a factor there, lining up in the slot. And it was a similar situation Saturday against Rutgers. He had 2 catches for 41 yards. He had that 33-yard catch where he was wide open there in the flat that JJ hit him on. So it made sense. I expect you'll see more of it moving forward. But Michigan does too. They do need to get them going in the run game to kind of balance things out with Blake.
No, I agree. I think we're going to see them trying to work Donovan more into the flow like that. And sooner or later, he's going to break out. It's going to happen. So I'm not worried about that. It was also a nice bounce back game for J.J. McCarthy. He was, I thought, sharp on his throws, only threw 21 times. Didn't try to do too much. Again, he was very effective running the ball. And most importantly, again, he took care of the football. It was maybe not spectacular, but a very good, clean performance from JJ, wasn't it?
Yes, and I got to think that was largely by design, coming off of the 3-interception game against Bowling Green. I don't think they wanted, JJ, having his confidence rattled early. They try to get him involved slowly. They encouraged him during the week to make the same play, something JJ actually talked about when we spoke to him yesterday on Monday. He wasn't trying to force things. He was taking what was given to him. We saw it with his legs too, right? He rushed for 51 yards on 7 carries, had a couple of key, pickups to get a first down. So he was effective, right? He didn't do anything spectacular, but he didn't really need to either. He played a safe, comfortable game. As you said, didn't make any mistakes. And I think that's really the key with him because his ceiling is so high, right? He can make a big throw. He can have a big game when he needs to, but you've got to limit the turnovers and limit the mistakes. You can afford the 3-interception game against the Bowling Green, but you can't do that against the Penn State or Ohio State moving forward. So I think it's all about getting him back into a rhythm. He was so comfortable those first couple of weeks, as we saw. I mean, he nearly had as many touchdown passes as he had completions or incompletions in the first 2 games. So he said that was kind of wearing on him a little bit against Bowling Green. You mentioned pressure. I think that maybe contributed to some of those throws and some of those decisions he made. But by and large, against Rutgers Saturday, much cleaner game, better performance, and it was more of a J.J. McCarthy-esque performance that we've grown accustomed to seeing.
Colston Loveland is starting to get more targets, which is fun to see, and we need at least another complement on the outside to Roman and Cornelius, and it looks like a true freshman, Samaj Morgan, might be that guy, doesn't it, Aaron?
Colston's really come on. I mean, we saw it late last year, especially in the Big Ten title game, the big catch against Ohio State. He's really picked up where he left off, and I think I'm wondering how much more they can get out of him, just because he's they throw the football to him and he catches everything thrown his way. He's this big-bodied receiver that can go up and get a 50-50 ball, make pretty much any catch, and he has no problem making the big play either. So sky's the limit for him. I can remember talking to Jake Butt in the offseason about him, and he seems to think Colston can be better than he was, and I think he's on that trajectory. So big things are ahead for him. He's really, developed into that number 3 really pass catching weapon for Michigan. And Samaj Morgan, it's kind of a continuation of Michigan kind of seeing what they have in their true freshman receivers. We saw it a few weeks ago with Fred Moore. Saturday was Samaj Morgan's turn, 2 catches, 26 yards. He had the nice catch on the over the shoulder throw from JJ there in the end zone. Got him involved, his feet wet. So I think it's a good thing. And that was kind of key for those, not only the non-conference game, but even early here in Big Ten play, right? Michigan can kind of get more some of these younger guys involved, whether it's in the offensive side of the ball or the defense, get their feet wet, get them comfortable playing so that if they need him, him or someone else later in the year, they can turn to him and he has confidence. He came out of the game Saturday. Afterwards, he spoke to the media and he was confident. He was really happy with his play. And I think that only bodes good things moving forward for some of these younger guys.
Well, after 4 games, Aaron, your offense is, usually settling into what it is. That's what happens with most teams. Now, Jim Harbaugh's teams usually get better as the season progresses. That's what we've seen in his tenure. And that has to be the hope this year, too, when you look at the schedule, because you really do just get a feeling we have not seen the best of this unit yet, have we?
No, and I'm really curious to see where they go, just because the first couple of weeks were dominated by the passing game. The last 2 weeks, they've really kind of reverted back to the Michigan offense of the last couple of years, right, where they run, much more than they pass. On Saturday, it was basically a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's something we've grown accustomed to, right? Michigan playing the ground and pound game, controlling the time of clock, the time of possession and the clock, and kind of just suffocating their opponent. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. Jim has said this week he's done giving his running backs 30 carries a game. So I'm really curious to see how Donovan Edwards gets involved here. I suspect they're going to continue to use JJ's legs when they can. But same token, too, I do think they realize they've got to get the passing game and more involved, right? JJ's now in his junior year. This theoretically could be his final year at Michigan. So you want him going out on a high note. At the same token, too, you've got a group of receivers that really have come on. You mentioned Colston earlier. Roman Wilson's really become a number 1 target. He stayed healthy and stayed available, which I think is so key for him. Cornelius Johnson's put together a series of good games. So there's a lot working for this offense. I think top to bottom, it's probably a more balanced, experienced, better top to bottom just offense than they had last year. So I do think they're going to try and use the pass more too. I was really impressed with the creativity, especially that first touchdown drive on Saturday. Some of the play calling from Sherrell Moore was very good. It was different. You get a little bit of everything there. And I think really that's, at the end of the day, what Michigan wants to be, right? This balanced everything offense that can kind of win however they choose to. And they're certainly on their way to doing that.
And I think it's interesting when I talk to fans, you hear a lot of worries. Oh, we're only averaging 31 points a game. And they're looking around at, some of the other offenses in the top 10, top 20. And, they're putting up some more points. Here's where I think the new clock rule might be impacting how many points Michigan puts up on the board. They only had 7 possessions on Saturday. And like Jim said, more important than it has been ever, it's points per possession, because when you play the style that Michigan does, especially if they're going to lean on the run as the year progresses, sprinkling in the passing game, you are going to have limited possessions.
That's just it. Yeah, and the players you're talking about this week, they're getting fewer possessions per game. So if you can hold on to the football longer, and control the clock and control the tempo of the game, you're essentially you're limiting the opportunities for your opponent to score. And at the end of the day, and Jim has said this several times on the last couple of weeks, to your point, they're not really worried about winning, margins here, right? They just don't want to win by 1 point. And while that maybe doesn't sound great, I think they're just focused on winning football games at this point. And yeah, the clock has had a different impact in college football this year. I really would have liked to see the Michigan offense last year with the clock rule, just based on how much they're running the football and how long some of their time of possessions were. But we saw it return on Saturday. I mean, there was that drive in the third quarter where the first drive of the second half where it took them nearly 8 minutes. That's kind of obviously ideal for that situation with the new clock rules. They can burn time off, especially when they have a comfortable lead, right? I think that's going to be the MO, getting ahead early, building a comfortable lead, and then killing the clock, just like they've done the last 2 years.
Exactly. And when you have the defense that Michigan has, our style of play, wanting to lean on that running game, you're really putting it on your defense too, because you have confidence that, hey, even if we have these long time churning drives, our defense is going to be fine.
Yeah, that's just it, right? The less time your defense is out there, the more polished they're going to be, less likely they're going to make mistakes. And you saw that Saturday. Really, the only mistake they made defensively was that first play of the first drive there for Rutgers, where Mikey Sanders still just kind of fell down and created that hole for that open, running lane for Rutgers receiver. He went to the house and got the touchdown. Beyond that, they played very well as a unit. Part of that obviously was the caliber of talent Rutgers has. Part of it was the game plan, and part of it too was they just weren't on the field a ton, and that certainly helps to get pass rushing when you one-on-one matchups. Guys are just less tired, right? So yeah, and then obviously the rotating plays a factor too. They've done a very good job of rotating an edge, and they got some depth at linebacker now. They're healthy at set in the secondary, so a lot of things are going right. I think things are starting to come together. And we're starting to see an identity with this Michigan team. Maybe it's a little bit later than maybe previous years, but so far so good.
Well, even without a fully healthy secondary, the defense just keeps on churning, especially the front seven. I think after 4 games, maybe I'll go out on a limb and say this defense is pretty darn good. It could be elite when they have a healthy secondary, Aaron. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think they're as good, if not better, than Jim has ever had in the middle, especially at defensive tackle. Mason Graham was out Saturday with a hand injury. He's not expected to play against Nebraska on Saturday. But, I mean, there's depth there. Chris Jenkins is playing very well. Kenneth Grant has been probably the biggest surprise of the defense yet. Jim Harbaugh's referred to him as a starter now for several weeks. They really believe that they can roll with him and be fine. He showed some pass rush on Saturday, helped tip some balls. He was really involved, and I think they really liked his development there. The edges I mentioned, they've been rotating. They're four deep there. They're really happy with what they have there. And then the linebackers, while it's not totally deep position, it's better than we've seen in previous years. And they really genuinely believe they got 3 starters there with Junior Colson, Michael Barrett, Ernest Hausman. Groups really playing together well. Granted, the level of competition hasn't been great, so it's hard to really get a gauge. But so far, I mean, the units really look elite, and they've done a good job of holding up, against teams.
So if we're looking for areas of concern after 4 games, I suppose I have 2. Not great concerns, but some things that make me worry. The punt return game has been, average at best. And James Turner has missed a couple of field goals. And, I guess most teams would say, hey, that's great. We have a great field goal kicker. But after Jake Moody, we are kind of spoiled. But still, we do need to shore up both of those areas moving forward, don't we?
Yeah, the book on James Turner coming in he was pretty solid within 40 yards, and then he was hit or miss outside of 40, and pretty much he's followed the book. His 2 missed field goals were outside 40. He did miss an extra point there in the first week. He kind of chalked it up as to jitters and everything else. But yeah, he's certainly not Jake Moody. I don't know if Michigan is ever going to replace Jake Moody. He might be probably the best field goal kicker they've ever had. So it's a work in progress there. I think they need to recognize too, maybe, some of Turner's strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to have to play to that, right? Maybe be a little more aggressive inside or, around midfield and around the 40. Kick returner, yes, that's a work in progress as well. There's a punt returner too. I remember the first couple of games, they really struggled in communication and reading maybe the football off the foot and everything else. It's starting to get better, but it's certainly, it's not where Michigan's used to it being. Some guys that really haven't played a ton, Joe Taylor at kick returner, Samaj Morgan. Tyler Morris has kind of emerged as a punt returner. But yeah, some work to do. The punting has been very good. I know they're happy with Tommy Doman and the job he's done. But yeah, returning and place kicking, especially field goals, are certainly a concern at this point.
This Saturday, Michigan goes on the road, of course, for the first time this year, meeting Nebraska. Thank goodness it's not a night game, because that's a loony bin at night, as we saw 2 years ago. It's just one tough home field advantage when you go into that stadium, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember going there in 2021, and I chalked it, at least that atmosphere on that day was up to par with Penn State or Ohio State. The fans there are rabid. I mean, you got to remember there are no professional sports teams out there, so college sports are basically all they have, and those folks there in Lincoln and the surrounding areas really support the Nebraska football team. And it's pretty incredible when you factor in how bad Nebraska's program has been for so long now. They still turn out. I mean, the stadium holds upwards of 90,000. They like to pack the place, and I think they will on Saturday. The players were asked about it, and the ones that played in that game a couple of years ago, Mikey Sanders still included, they put it up there with some of the best environments they played in. I put it up there, top of the Big Ten. It's a fun place to play. The fans come out. And if Michigan fans, listen to this, have an opportunity to go, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great fan base. Just an incredible place to watch a football game. Now, this one opened, I think, 19 points a spread for Michigan, but this game does have a few interesting things to watch. Whoever the quarterback is for Nebraska, we're not sure yet, but this team loves the option. They don't run it a ton, but they run it very effectively. And when you don't see that much, as I'm sure Jesse Mitter is just drilling especially his edge guys, that's an offense that can be tricky to stop if you do not play assignment football.
It is. Yeah, I can remember years ago when Michigan was getting, preparing for the Army, that, and Don Brown would talk about it. They'd spend a lot of time in the off season preparing for it. So yeah, they got to stay disciplined. You got to keep your eye on the football and your guy, and not give up too many big games. Quarterback wise, Nebraska, it's a question mark at this point. Jeff Sims was the guy the first couple of games. He struggled, got injured. Heinrich Harburg is the other guy in the mix there. So we don't really know who's going to start just yet. Matt Rule was really evasive when he was asked about it on Monday. I think partly probably from a preparation standpoint. So Nebraska hasn't been great offensively. It is first year for Matt Rule, so I think he's still trying to install his scheme and get some of his players in there. Nonetheless, I mean, they played relatively disciplined. Turnovers have been an issue, and I think partly that was on Jeff Sims' quarterback. So I'm not expecting a ton of offensive output from Nebraska on Saturday, despite their offensive scheme and how they're trying to play. You mentioned the 17, 18-point spread, none of that, but the point total is only sitting at 42. So I don't think they're expecting a ton of points in this game. I'd be surprised if Nebraska scores a ton. It's really going to come down to, I think, Michigan keeping Nebraska out of the end zone. If they can do that, there's a pretty great shot that they win this game, and maybe perhaps comfortably as well.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Nebraska needs to run the football this year for a couple of reasons. Saturday especially, to shorten the game, keep the score within arm's reach. That's really going to be their goal. And they've only thrown the ball 88 times in 4 games, so they have to run. But at least on paper, when you see what they've done through the first 4 games, you've got to think, if Michigan shuts down that running game, it could be a quick day.
Yeah, and as we were talking earlier, Nebraska's probably looking at the clock rules too and trying to play to their advantages and play to their strengths. And as you said, trying to keep the game close for as long as possible and hoping you can break a big play, whether it's defensively, special teams, whatever the case may be, and upset them. So they're going to be looking to play similar style brand of football, keep away, holding on to the football, turning time off the clock, having sustained long drives. And if Michigan can shut them down and keep the ball away and score early like they like to do, it should be a victory for Michigan. I say that cautiously just because a couple of years ago Michigan was in a very similar situation. They're riding high, coming off a road win at Wisconsin, playing very good football, and they went in Nebraska, and it was a scare, right? It was a close game at the very end. Michigan had to pull it out late. They only won by 3 points. So it wouldn't surprise me if this game ends up being a one or two possession game. Just based on how both of these teams like to play. Michigan has yet to cover a point spread yet, so it could be a very low-scoring, tight game down the stretch. But as we've seen through these first 4 games, Michigan's they've done a good job of pulling away, and I think that's a strength of theirs. Their depth and their talent kind of whittles away at the opponent. wears them down to the point where Michigan pulls away and wins comfortably in the end.
Well, defensively, the Huskers have switched to a 3-3-5 look this year, which we don't see a lot of. You're seeing more of it in college football, especially out in the Mountain West, but they've been pretty darn good so far. It will help if their outstanding linebacker Luke Reimer plays, but I guess he's questionable. But other than Colorado, they have not really been tested yet, even though they're number one against the run in Division One.
Yeah, I think that's, again, I think that's more based on who they played, right? Colorado loves throwing the ball. They did kind of do a decent job against Minnesota, who does like running the football. But I think the key for Michigan on Saturday really is going to be kind of just taking what Nebraska's giving you, whether it's giving the football to Donovan Edwards or Blake Corum and asking them to get 3, 4, 5 yards to carry and just being happy with it. They may not break a big play. They may not break huge chunk plays, but if they can get average 5 or 6 yards to carry and sustain that over time against a 3-3-5 scheme where, the linebackers and the DBs are crashing in on the line of scrimmage, I think that'll be fine. They're not necessarily going to need a home run hit. And as long as they keep going, turning time off the clock and scoring and putting it in the end zone as opposed to maybe settling for field goals, it should be a good day. But time will tell, right? Like you said, Nebraska statistically has done very good. Competition hasn't been great, but you could say the same thing for Michigan too. So very interesting. I'm really curious to see how Michigan answers the bell. First road game of the season. They've spent the first 4 weeks in the friendly confines. Now they hit the road, and we'll kind of see what their makeup and their identity really is.
Yeah, you cannot discount this is the first road game of the season. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes takes a while to get your road legs under you, so that is going to be interesting to watch. Final question before we let you get away, Aaron. The Big Ten has looked not so good overall in September, I think, but Penn State looks pretty darn impressive. Ohio State won a big one down in South Bend on Saturday night. I'm not sure if they should have won that game. They were getting handled, I thought, by that Notre Dame offensive line most of the second half, but they pulled it out. So, kudos to them. Michigan can't overlook anyone on their schedule, I don't think, with our style of football. But as of right now, that Penn State game in November and then Ohio State, they are shaping up to be the Titanic battles, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, not necessarily that order, and then everyone else in the Big Ten. It's going to be a fascinating. I'm fascinated to watch the season play out. Those are two of the games that are probably going to define Michigan's season. Ideally, they win both and go 12-0 and return to the Big Ten title game. Wouldn't surprise me if somehow those are split. So it's really going to come down to those two games, as you said. I think those are going to determine whether Michigan is the team they want to be this year. Penn State looks very good. You can make the case maybe they have a better defense than Michigan. Their secondary has played very well. They played a little bit better level of competition so far than Michigan. I'm really looking forward to those matchups. I don't know how much we're going to learn about this Michigan team over the next couple of weeks. I am curious to see how they respond to playing on the road. And they are in Big Ten play, so you never know. There are obviously always potential slip-ups. But that Michigan State game isn't what I don't think it's going to be what maybe some of us expected it to be at the beginning of the year. And then, you got a bunch of teams in the Big Ten really floundering. So it's, Minnesota hasn't looked particularly great. Indiana struggled. They barely beat Akron on Saturday. So it should be smooth sailing, dare I say, coast to the Penn State game November 11th. But first and foremost, they've got to focus on playing in Lincoln on Saturday. It's not it's not going to be a chalk game. They're going to have to show up and play and certainly put together a strong start. But top to bottom, not a great Big Ten. You've got 3 teams at the top, and I think everyone else is just kind of fighting for bowl eligibility at this point.
Yeah, I think 3 weeks from now, almost a month from now, the game that's going to be a real indicator for the Big Ten is going to be when Penn State travels to Ohio State. That should be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think that the winner of that game will certainly be, I think, the biggest challenger to Michigan. Unfortunately for Michigan, they maybe get Penn State on the road, and then they get maybe the better team, Ohio State, at home. So that Penn State game is going to be fascinating. It would not shock me if that ends up as a loss. I mean, we still got a long way to go there, but it's different going on the road in Happy Valley and winning a football game. Michigan has shown that they've had struggles there in the past. Nonetheless, I mean, they've handled them the last couple of years. They've handled Ohio State the last couple of years. So they'll probably be the favorites going in this game. But at this point, I think for Michigan, it's all about getting better on both sides of the ball, improving, especially for the run game, and just finding an identity on offense and building to that point. And I think that was the ultimate goal coming into this year. Jim Harbaugh and his staff have done a very good job, especially the last 2 years of kind of designing a slow build to where they it's kind of a drip situation where they're introducing things early, building as time goes on, and then eventually come those big games late in the year, they can break out some of their whether it's the plays we haven't seen or finding a superstar in the making on offense.
Yeah, and that's why I tell fans that I talk to, don't worry about what you're seeing right now. It's going to change. There's a lot of football to be played. I mean, you go ahead and anticipate the Penn State trip and then Ohio State coming to the Big House. But first things first, we have to keep our eyes on Nebraska this Saturday and take it one game at a time. So I'm looking forward to it. Here with us today has been beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. Always a pleasure having you on the show, Aaron. We thank you for your time and look forward to that next visit.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
On Quick Hits today, Mason Graham will miss Saturday with an undisclosed hand or arm injury. Miles Hinton is banged up but should be available. Jim said he expects wideout Darius Clemens back, and Amorian Walker is now back at 100% and practicing. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan leads the series with 7 wins against 4 losses, and there has been 1 tie. The first meeting with the Huskers was on October 21st of 1905 in Ann Arbor, a 31-0 Michigan win. Last year's game was also in Ann Arbor on November 12th, a 34-3 Michigan win. Head coach Matt Rule is in his first year at the helm. He is 2-2. This is his 8th year as a head coach, and his record stands at 49 wins against 45 losses. Last year, the Huskers were 4-8 overall, 3-6 in the Big Ten West, good for a 6th-place finish. They returned 5 starters on offense and 7 on defense. Their last bowl appearance was in the 2016 Music City Bowl. There they lost to Tennessee, 48-24. The weatherman says it's going to be a scorcher in Lincoln on Saturday, sunny with temps reaching the mid-90s, and there is only a 10% chance of rain. So even after 4 games, both teams do have questions. Is Nebraska really an improved team? The numbers say very much improved, but other than Colorado, they haven't been tested. As far as we go, is our offensive line pretty much what we've seen so far, or will they take the next step on Saturday? And can our defense shut down a good running team that uses the option quite a bit? We'll find out on Saturday, and both teams will have a better idea of just what their strengths and weaknesses are after this one. Next week, we stay on the road for a night game against P.J. Fleck and his Golden Gophers. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, my scheduled guest is Mike Grimm, the radio play-by-play voice of Minnesota football. On Thursday, we'll be joined by editor John Borton from the Wolverin. So make sure you tell your family and friends about the show and join us again next week. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Nebraska. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!